It's now time for the Pony Cake Sports Podcast with your hosts, Josh Stevens, Tim Thompson, and Tom Schultz. Woo!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another fantastic episode of the Pony Keg Sports Podcast. Today we are going to be breaking down our consensus top 40 wide receivers, standard 12-team PPR league. So it's going to break everything down for you, let you know who the top 40 guys are. A little bit of debate back and forth as always. I am your host today, Tim Thompson, but I am joined by, as always, Tom Schultz. Tom, how are you?
I'm maintaining, man.
Maintaining? Just maintaining?
Yeah.
Just maintaining. Fair enough. It's been an interesting day, I believe, for everyone. And on the phone, coming from us live from, I believe, Bettendorf, Iowa. I could be wrong, but Joshua Stevens on the line. Josh, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing just wonderful, Tim. How are you doing?
Oh, I am doing very well. Thank you so much for asking. Where are you right now in your travels, sir?
Like you said, I am in Iowa, coming back to Chicago in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. It's going to take you 2 weeks to get from Bettendorf, Iowa to Illinois. So you're probably going to take a drive down to the Rams to see their camp that's not there anymore. What are you doing?
Driving down to Indy and then back up.
Down to Indy and then back up. All right, fair enough. Well, I guess make sure that you are following us across social media. You can find us on Facebook, Pony Keg Sports. Find Josh at Pony Keg Sports. You can follow Tom at Pony_Keg_Tom. And you can follow me at Fight Talk Tim. And make sure that you follow along with our sponsors, Rogue Energy. It is delicious. It replaces coffee. It replaces Red Bull. Any pre-workout. It's amazing. And if you go and put in the code PKS at checkout, it saves you 10% and lets Rogue Energy know that you are a PKS follower. It's a win-win for everybody, so just do it. I want to start, though. Gentlemen, wide receiver number 1. Tom, who's our consensus?
At our number 1 spot, we got Antonio Brown. 2 of us had AB ranked number 1. Josh, you were the only one. Probably one of the only people in the country that does not have AB as their top wide receiver. Who do you got number 1 and why?
My number 1 that I have is wide receiver Michael Thomas from the New Orleans Saints. And, a lot of people are going to call me crazy. A lot of people are going to call me dumb for this, but my rankings and my projections of players have been unconventional of sorts. And I'm under the firm belief that this year that obviously, we've seen Antonio Brown already suffer a hiccup in training camp. Nothing major, but some sort of a hiccup. But also, Ben Roethlisberger got spiked on his head like a tombstone pile driver from The Undertaker. And with the possibility of Ben Roethlisberger not being completely healthy, with the possibility of none other than Antonio Brown possibly being hurt, I am projecting him getting hurt throughout the season. That's why I personally do not have him as my number 1. Michael Thomas has all the opportunity to flourish in this season with the Saints.
All of the kind of the trend of last year, how numbers were down for Drew Brees, kind of focus more on the running game. None of that scares you going into this season?
No, that's actually what makes me feel a little bit more confident about my pick. I feel like they really geared towards the running game last year. They did a lot of dump-off passes to Alvin Kamara, and you got to remember, Mark Ingram's not going to be there for the first couple of weeks. I think that they may try to give the ball to Alvin Kamara, but I don't think it's going to be working as much, and I think the passing game is going to open up even more than what they think, especially the first 4 weeks.
We'll leave it to hipster Josh to stay away from the hot pick of number 1. But regardless of what Josh thinks, regardless of how good Michael Thomas may or may not be, our consensus number 1 wide receiver is Antonio Brown. Everything that Josh said, I don't necessarily disagree with. I have Drew Brees ranked higher in my QB rankings, and I have Alvin Kamara ranked lower in my running back rankings for the exact reasons of what Josh just said. but I still don't think that that's going to be enough to dethrone one Antonio Brown. He's the only guarantee at the wide receiver position, in my personal opinion. He's only 30 years old. Big Ben was not even diagnosed with a concussion. He was put in protocol, not diagnosed with a concussion. He's going to sit out, and they're going to come week 1, and they're going to come out firing. Yes, that hip is concerning with one Antonio Brown. I will give you that, Josh. But still, I think once it comes down to it, game 1, week 1, Antonio Brown, Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell, Juju Smith-Schuster, the whole gang is going to be out there, and Antonio Brown is a guaranteed top 3 wide receiver in the PPR.
I just think right now it's kind of silly just not having AB as your number 1 guy. Look, Josh has him as his number 2, so it's really not that big of a risk. I get what he's saying about Michael Thomas. Breeze had one of his worst years statistically throwing the football, and Mike Thomas still had 100 receptions. The only thing that really hurt him last year was his touchdowns. You got to expect that those touchdowns get closer to 10 like he had his rookie season, and he's only going to be getting better with Antonio Brown. The injuries, yeah, you got to worry about it a little bit. 30 years old, normally around this age, when people start getting injured, it happens more and more frequently. Hopefully that doesn't happen to the great Antonio Brown. He's also on Madden this year. Firm believer in that Madden curse, baby. Really didn't do much last year against Tom Brady. But the whole Pittsburgh Steelers, I feel like it might be about to blow up. 1 or 2 bad things, and this whole thing could just go tumbling down. The whole situation with Le'Veon Bell, Big Ben getting tombstone pile driven in training camp, like Josh said. Just if things go bad, they go really bad for this football team. And hopefully Antonio Brown remains this elite number 1 wideout, and hopefully he remains worthy of being drafted in the top 5 of all fantasy leagues right now.
So 2 things about that I want to address real quick before we move on. Number 1, you said the Madden curse. While it may not have affected Tom Brady's regular season, I'm surprised more people haven't gotten on the train that the Madden curse is the reason why Tom Brady was unable to reach out and catch that ball in the Super Bowl. That would have been a game changer. I am willing to say they would have won the Super Bowl if Tom Brady makes that catch. Thanks a lot, John Madden, you fat fuck. And I want to just say lastly about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Tom, to your point, them being on the edge, on the precipice of potentially blowing up. I don't know why exactly. I feel like Mike Tomlin is forever on the hot seat for the rest of his time in Pittsburgh. I feel like he's going to be the scapegoat for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Big Ben's aging. Antonio Brown's at that kind of turning point in his career. Which way is he going to go? Le'Veon Bell's going to be on his way out. A lot of changes like you alluded to. I feel like Mike Tomlin is going to be the one with his head on the chopping block, just because, in all honesty, I don't think he's that good of a coach. Let's move on here to numbers 2 through 5 in the consensus ranking. Number 2, Odell Beckham Jr. Tied at 3 and 4 are Michael Thomas and DeAndre Hopkins. And at number 5, Keenan Allen.
All these guys, clear-cut studs. When these guys are healthy, they deserve to be picked in the first round of fantasy drafts. Keenan Allen, that's the one guy out of this group that I really want to talk about. When this guy is healthy, he's just on a whole different level. If his health wasn't such an issue, I think he'd be a top 3 option for pretty much anyone. You look what he was able to do the last 3 seasons pretty much. He's been over 80% of the time he's been a startable wide receiver. No other wide receiver in football has been able to do that. That is saying a lot. Hunter Henry is out. This guy is going to be force-fed the football. Pretty much a lock for 150-plus targets, and that's what scores you fantasy football points. You want guys who get tons of targets. Him and Pip Rivers are always on the same page. Clear-cut number 1 option for the LA Chargers.
I agree completely. Listen, the reason Keenan Allen is even in this top 5 is because of Joshua Stevens. Josh, you had him at 3, and I'm going to ask why here in a second. Tom and I both had him at 6. My only point about Keenan Allen, that's why I had to keep him out of my top 5. Those injury concerns, how is he going to handle that? That's my biggest concern with Keenan Allen, Josh.
Yeah, the injury concerns I totally understand, and I see where you guys are coming from. But you got to look at it. Pure talent-wise, and the way that team is built with no tight end right now, and I believe they still have not re-signed Antonio Gates. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they haven't done so. They're going to be running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, and when Keenan Allen is healthy, he is one of the wide receivers that get the most targets on a year basis. And I think Keenan Allen's going to have a career year this year. I think he's going to be worthy of a top 3 pick. That's why I had him number 3 on my list.
Fair enough. The other guy I want to get to here real quick, last year's number 1 PPR ranked wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. And that was with the, Deshaun Watson burst. But that was only, 6 weeks long?
Yep.
So there was another 12 weeks there. DeAndre Hopkins still finds a way to dethrone one Antonio Brown, become the number 1 ranked wide receiver, and still not seeing a lot of love, in all honesty. I did a mock draft where I was in the 11th spot, and he fell all the way to 10. And I know running backs get hot the first 3 to at least 3 picks, if not 4, normally running back. But I felt like if I'm able to get DeAndre Hopkins at 111, somewhere around there, I'm thrilled, in all honesty, especially with how high you're seeing Deshaun Watson go in all of these mock drafts. What are your thoughts on DeAndre Hopkins and what he brings to the table this year?
I like Hopkins, and I think I'm the highest on him out of us 3. Adam as my number 2 guy. Just the consistency, what he was able to do last season, even without Mr. Deshaun Watson. He was the only wide receiver in fantasy football last year that finished each week as a top 32 option, meaning he was startable every week of the season. Antonio Brown can't say that. Julio Jones can't say that. Keenan Allen can't say that. All these stud wide receivers we've been talking about, DeAndre Hopkins is the only guy who is worth starting every week of the season. That is truly impressive. That does not happen, especially for a guy that plays over 5 games in a year. He played 15 games last year, rested week 17. But with him and Watson, that upside, that is tremendous. They were on a completely different level last year. Finally, he had a quarterback that could get him the football. Finally, he had an offense that was explosive. But he might be linked to Watson if he wants to be that number 1 overall wide receiver again. He wouldn't have been number 1 receiver last year. Brown played an extra game.
Sure.
I think it was a point separated the 2 of them,
Yep.
and Brown only played 14 weeks.
Yep.
But I'm still in on DeAndre Hopkins. He's worth being picked late first round, early second round.
DeAndre Hopkins seems like one of those guys that's been around forever, only 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Getting in his prime.
It's nuts for me. Josh, I want to ask you about a guy who's our number 2 overall consensus ranked, Odell Beckham Jr. Coming off of that injury, had his struggles. Was it last year he fought the net? I think it was. I'm pretty sure last year he fought the net. Had his issues, was struggling early, gets a touchdown in that game where then he eventually goes down. It seems a little bit, it was chaotic there in New York. It seems like things have kind of straightened out a little bit. What are your thoughts on Odell Beckham Jr., Josh?
I like Odell Beckham Jr. This year. I still had him as a top wide receiver for me. I think
number
I had him
3.
4 or
number
5
3.
Number 3 on my list.
4.
Oh, I'm sorry, number 4. I was looking at time. Yeah, you had him 4.
Yeah, number 4 on my list. I like OBJ. I like the bounce back. They got Saquon Barkley there now. It's going to open up the passing game. The big question is, they have too many receiving weapons. They have OBJ now. They have Sterling Shepard. They got the emerging tight end and Evan Ingram. So they got quite a few people to throw the ball around to. So I'm kind of curious if it's going to spread out more than what people think, or if it's going to be really targeted towards OBJ. Because if you look at some of these other wide receivers that are on these lists, such as Michael Thomas and Keenan Allen, who else do they have to contend with? They don't really have too much else to contend with. What, you have Cameron Meredith and Ted Ginn Jr.? That's not on the same level as saying that you have an Evan Ingram and a Sterling Shepard.
The one thing you're always worried about with Odell Beckham Jr. with some of the stunts that he's pulled in the past is, where is he mentally? Where is he? If he goes a game or two with only getting 3-4 looks and the team's winning without him, what effect does that have on him? We saw what that had on someone like a Dez Bryant. Now listen, Dez is in the twilight of his career where Odell Beckham Jr. is in his prime, but I still think that that's something that you want to watch with all the weapons that Josh just mentioned. Let's go here 6 through 10. At number 6, we have Julio Jones.
Hey, real quick. Do you guys know how many targets DeAndre Hopkins had last year?
153. I don't know.
306.
306. What? 175. 175.
Wow.
He led the league in targets.
Oh, wow. I guess
had 96 catches. The next closest to him was Larry Fitzgerald with 162, and Antonio Brown with 162. Right behind him were Jarvis Landry with 160, Keenan Allen with 159, and then Julio and Michael Thomas with 149. So pretty interesting numbers there, targets-wise.
Very, very interesting. Wow. Going back to our 6 through 10 here, number 6, Julio Jones. Number 7, Devontae Adams. Number 8, A.J. Green. Number 9, Mike Evans. And number 9/10, tied at 9, are Mike Evans and T.Y. I call him Eugene Hilton.
I think you guys are sleeping on Mr. Julio Jones too much right now. I think he deserves to be a top 4 guy. He's number 4 for me. Last year finished as I believe 6 or 7 as a PPR wide receiver with only 3 touchdowns. This dude has been a lock for over 1,400 yards, over 90 receptions. There has to be a positive change and a positive switch in touchdowns. I don't think there's any way he gets 3 again. I think there's a good chance he gets over 6, between 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. And if he does that, he's a clear-cut top 4 option. And he's going at 201 right now. I think that's fantastic value. I've never been super high on Julio. But really, is there a more physically gifted wide receiver than Julio Jones? And I just really think Matt Ryan and that offense with Steve Sarkisian is going to get better in year 2.
Josh, I'm going to take this real quick, and then I'm going to let you talk about Julio, because this one, I've owned Julio in 2 separate leagues over the last 2 seasons. The problem I have with Julio Jones is he's a big game guy, which is fine. He's going to win you 2-3 weeks, but overall, he's just a big game guy. He's not going to be that consistent, 8 to 12 point wide receiver. He's just not. He's not been that. That's the most frustrating part about Julio Jones to me, is he is so physical. He's so talented, and still, how long are we going to wait for Julio Jones to be Antonio Brown? For Julio Jones to be Odell Beckham Jr., to be that guy? How long are we going to wait for that? And you can't tell me that the addition of one Calvin Ridley, it pissed off Julio enough. It's in his head already. You add in the running back factor there. Listen, he's still going to get his, but that's why I don't have him in my top 5. I'm not necessarily sleeping on him. He's still great. He's still a potential first-round wide receiver, but I just, not for me.
I have one question for you, Tim. Do you think Keenan Allen's a consistent wide receiver?
No.
You don't think Keenan Allen is?
No. Well, barring injury, I guess.
Well, last season, both of them finished as top 30 wide receivers, 81% of their games. Personally, I think Keenan Allen's a consistent wide receiver. I think if you dive into the numbers a little bit, Julio has been as well.
Go from that. Josh, what are your thoughts on Julio?
So this is, and it's going to be funny because I'm going to throw some numbers out at you guys, but Julio Jones caught 88 balls last year. Yeah, he had 1,444 yards overall, and only those 3 touchdowns, like Tom said. He's pretty close in comparison with one Michael Thomas. Now, Julio Jones, that 88% or that 88 catches that he had, that only equates to catching 59% of the balls thrown his way. Where you compare it to Michael Thomas, where he caught almost 70% of the balls thrown his way. And then you're going to break down Julio Jones overall on a game-to-game basis. Tim, you said he's a big game player, correct?
Yes, sir.
20% of his production in fantasy football last year came in week number 12. 20% overall in 1 week out of his entire fantasy overall.
Wait, Joshua, are you providing stats to agree with something that I said?
I just think it's crazy to pin your hopes and dreams on one guy like that. I like Julio Jones. Me personally, I had Julio in a league last year. Once I drafted him, I was like, oh my God, I want to get rid of him. I like Julio. I don't want him on my fantasy team. I think he is deserving to be at the spot that I put him, I believe, 6th overall. Me personally, I'm staying away, but I'm going to give the guy the kudos that he does deserve, because he does get quite a few yards.
Josh, you had him at 6. Tom had him at 4, and I had him all the way down at 7. Another guy that I want to talk about with that has that big name value and has not had that big name production, over the last 2 seasons, I think it's fair to say, whether it's to do with injury or not, AJ Green. Another name that I think of, to go back to what Josh just said, that when I hear it, I kind of get sick to my stomach. I know if I come up and he's that first name on my board, I'm going to want to draft him. But then when I kind of think to myself, is that you shouldn't. Guys, AJ Green, are you drafting him in the first 2 rounds?
I would draft him middle to late second.
Josh?
Middle to late second, I would agree with that, Tom. Again, I just kind of harped on Julio Jones with his catch percentage of 59%. You look at AJ Green, his catch percent last year was 51%, barely catching 50% of the ball thrown his way. Granted, his next best wide receiver was Tyler Boyd and Brandon LaFell. Now Brandon LaFell is not on the team, and now we're talking about John Ross being the de facto number 2 guy. But they also didn't really have a run game going either in the early part of the season. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when Joe Mixon gets going, and if that's going to open up the door for AJ Green. So I'm comfortable taking AJ Green in the middle of the second round.
That's the X factor there. When coming up to AJ Green, you have to ask yourself, what is Joe Mixon going to be for this team? If he's the bell cow that all 3 of us think he's going to be here in 2018, then AJ Green is definitely a viable option as a number 1 wide receiver. The last guy I want to talk about is, I shouldn't say the last guy in this top 10 because there's a lot of big names here still. But number 7, Davante Adams. This is someone who I think you guys are sleeping on big time. Davante Adams still comes out last year, puts up monster numbers, has a great year the year before with Aaron Rodgers. I feel like Aaron Rodgers went away and Davante Adams became a man. We didn't get to see really who Davante Adams was, and I really hope Mike's not listening to this because it's going to get him all wet. Davante Adams is now that elite level wide receiver. I had Davante Adams all the way up at number 3. I feel like this is going to be a career year. I feel like he's going to catch a ton of balls. The addition of Jimmy Graham is going to open him up big time. Randall Cobb still being able to go and play that quote-unquote Tom Waddle role, going over the middle, getting beat up. Davante Adams is going to be an absolute beast this year. And I feel like as a consensus, we are doing everyone wrong by having him all the way down at 7.
I really like Davante Adams. My one issue with him is he's just been so touchdown dependent. Is he going to have 3 straight years of having double-digit touchdowns? That's pretty hard to do in the NFL. Julio Jones has never done that. I don't know if AJ Green has done that. I know AB has done that, but he's pretty elite. Michael Thomas only had 5 or 6 last year. So for a guy to routinely just score over 10 touchdowns every year, that's hard to do. What's more reliable in fantasy football is yardage, and he's never finished top 20 in the NFL in yards. That's what scares me about Adams, but the fact that he's the number 1 option in Green Bay, you have to have him in your top 10. I have him at 8. I feel like that's plenty respectable.
Josh?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Last year he finished number 21 in yardage overall for wide receivers. But if you take away some of those touchdowns, Tim, it's going to be a little shocking on where he falls down on the total overall ranking. You take away, let's just say, 3 of those touchdowns, that'll bump him all the way down to about wide receiver number 20 overall for fantasy purposes. So it's going to be quite a bit of a jump if that actually did happen. But granted, he did score 10 touchdowns. He does have a catch percent rate of 63%, which is actually pretty decent right there. It's not the greatest, it's not the best. But he's only caught last year, 74 passes. They also drafted 3 wide receivers. They also added a tight end and Jimmy Graham. They also look like they're trying to get the running game going with Jamal Williams. It's going to be interesting to see what Green Bay does, but you got to remember that they do have the number 1 quarterback in the NFL on their team throwing the ball. And if Aaron Rodgers, Aaron is 100% healthy, then Davante Adams has to be considered as a top 10 guy. But a top 3 guy, or would you have him at 4-3?
I had him at
think
3.
that is
I had him at
fucking
3.
Ludicrous.
I just think that I will give you the fact that, the addition of Jimmy Graham is going to take away some of those red zone, some of those touchdown opportunities. I think that you bringing up the Packers running game is laughable, in all honesty, because they haven't looked good. They don't know what they're doing, and they've never had a run game with Aaron Rodgers. I just think back to the days of Aaron Rodgers and basically him just chucking the ball around to who? His best friend, Jordy Nelson. He's going to go back to what he knows. And who's the most reliable wide receiver on that team? Who he knows right now. That's Davante Adams. So that's where my...
You have to remember, too, though, Davante Adams and Jordy Nelson are two completely different stylistic wide receivers.
For sure. Randall Cobb is a better comparison to Jordy Nelson than Davante Adams is. I get that. I'm not saying that...
So should we put Randall Cobb or Randy Cobb?
I never said they're the same. My point was, who's the more reliable wide receiver out of the two? It's Davante
Adams, of course, but I said, two completely different stylistic wide receivers.
Well, right. No one said they're the same.
I think you're doing yourself and the fans who are listening to this a disservice of saying that.
When Davante Adams has 15 touchdowns, we'll readdress this situation. Last question I have for you guys, and I've had this situation come up. You're up at 2-4, let's call it, 2-5. All the running backs that you wanted are gone. You already have a stud. You want to go wide receiver. Mike Evans and T.Y. Hilton are the two best available on the board. Who are you taking?
At 2 what?
Well, wherever you're at. The mid-second round, the late second round, wherever you're at. There's no running back that you want necessarily. That you already have a stud running back. You want a wide receiver. That's your draft plan. The draft plan that you set up for yourself beforehand was go running back, then wide receiver. It's T.Y. or it's Mike Evans. Who do you take?
For me, it'd be T.Y. But the scary thing with him, he's completely tied to Andrew Luck. If Andrew Luck's healthy, he's probably going to have a top 12 season, wide receiver 1 numbers. If Luck is not healthy, you kind of saw his floor last season, finishing, it was like 25 or 26. That's kind of where he's at. But I'd rather have Hilton. I think he's got higher upside, bigger, more big play potential, and is the clear-cut number 1 guy. I absolutely love Mike Evans. But that team's pretty loaded with weapons. The Colts, on the other hand, might be a bit iffy. Best besides T.Y. might be Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron.
Not to mention, Mr. Crab Legs himself is out for the first 3 games of the season. Joshua, Eugene, or Evans?
It's funny because when I was originally making these rankings, I actually had T.Y. slightly higher on my list, and then I rethought to myself that Winter Soldier would not be able to last the whole season, so I had to bump T.Y. down a couple spots. But if Andy Luck does stay completely healthy, I could easily see T.Y. Hilton become a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. Me personally, I understand Tom's argument, the fact that the Bucs are loaded with weapons. I understand your argument, Tim, that Crab Legs, Jameis Winston is out for the first couple of games. I just think Michael Evans is just that good of a talent. He's going to get that many balls thrown to him still, regardless of how many weapons that they have. I think that I would still lean towards Michael Evans.
The biggest asset to Mike Evans, in my opinion, is the fact that I think the Buccaneers are going to be down a lot. They're going to have to be throwing that ball around. Josh, you mentioned egregious, having Davante Adams up at 3, having Mike Evans all the way up at 7, in my personal opinion, is egregious. But I digress. Gentlemen, we're going to move a little bit more quickly here because we took almost a full half hour through that top 10 because we get a little bit heated. So let's kind of hit some of these a little bit quicker here. Number 11, we have a tie, Tyreek Hill and Jarvis Landry. Number 13, Stephon Diggs. 14, Larry Fitzgerald. 15, Adam Thielen.
I'm all in on Stephon Diggs right now. He's number 11 on my board. Tim, you had him the highest. Kind of shocked. You had him at number 10. Josh had him all the way down at 20, but I think he's going to be – I think it's his year to be the guy in Minnesota. I like what I've seen between him and Kirk Cousins. And if he could just stay healthy on a per-game basis, this dude has been a top 14 option wide receiver the last 2 seasons, but he's never played a full season. This guy can put it together all year. He's got a chance to be special.
Josh, is there someone out of those 5 who interests you, or
He needs to talk about Jarvis.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about Jarvis Landry there, buddy? You had him all the way up at number 10. Why?
Yeah, I like Jarvis Landry a lot. You got to look at him. He finished number 5 overall wide receiver last year. Granted, he was on the Miami Dolphins, and his targets, I believe he was number 3 overall in targets thrown his way, or tied for, or maybe 4 with targets thrown his way. Now, with Tyrod Taylor, he has not really had any offensive weapons on the Buffalo Bills. He goes to a Browns team where he's going to get a true, defined number 1 wide receiver in Jarvis Landry. And I don't give a shit if Tyrod Taylor throws crossing routes all goddamn day long.
Woo!
It's going to be Jarvis Landry catching the ball.
Get him, son. Get him, Hugh. What was that? What'd you say, Hugh?
What was that?
What'd you say, Hugh?
Bless him.
So you're just all
That's all I
about
got.
you're all about Jarvis Landry. All right, fair enough. I mean, I agree. I like Jarvis Landry as well. I just don't see top 10 numbers, especially you talk about a team with a lot of weapons there, a lot of mouths to feed.
Well, technically, you got to think about this, right? Technically, they have a lot of weapons. Technically, they have a lot of mouths to feed. But where's Josh Gordon at? He just returned to practice, but he can't practice.
It's not in my
Who knows if
top
he's
40.
gonna be able- Who knows if he's going to be able to play week 1, week 2, week 7? We don't know that. Antonio Callaway, he looks like the real deal. He looks like he is the true guy on that, or could be a true guy on that team. Is he going to be able to play the whole season because he got busted with the weed on the offseason?
With the weed, okay, Grandpa. He got busted with the weed.
I'm just saying.
JG2 is how I like to refer to Callaway. Josh Gordon II. We'll see how that all plays out. My biggest question out of these guys, and I mean, there's Diggs, there's Thielen, there's questions there. How's Tyreek Hill going to play into one Patrick Mahomes? But my biggest question is one Larry Fitzgerald. Is this finally the year? How many years in a row do I have to freaking doubt this old man before he finally gives up? Like, I truly believe now. I don't even remember where I had him ranked. It wasn't very high. I had him at 18.
You're by far the lowest.
Yeah, I just think at some point, and I mean, listen, he's my lowest, but he's still a solid number 2 in my head, right? So my whole thought process with Larry Fitzgerald is, listen, he's going to keep showing people up. He's going to keep dominating, and I think he's going to go out on top. I look for him to be the guy again in Arizona. It's just who's playing quarterback. That's my concern. Josh Rosen has not looked good, in my personal opinion, from what I've seen so far. So, what's going to happen there? That's my question.
It is a
And
little.
my question for you guys is it kind of shocking that we have Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen so close in their rankings and so high in these rankings? We have them, both in the top 15, correct?
Yep, 13 and 15. I don't think that.
So
I don't think it's
a great
surprising.
wide receiver, Laquan Treadwell. Sorry, I had to say that. So last year there was only one duo in the top 20, and that was Marvin Jones and Golden Tate. So kind of crazy to think about that.
Yeah, based on ADP, Diggs is 11, Thielen's 12. So that's kind of how they're being drafted as well. A lot of people are all in on Cousins and expecting that offense to take the next step this year, is my guess. But Tim, you brought up Fitz. I'm just done doubting the dude. I think last year, we all had him very low end wide receiver 2, like 22 to 24 range.
Yep.
And I'm just believing in him. If it bites me in the ass this year, I guess it is what it is. But you look at the type of season he was able to put out last year with the type of quarterbacks. I don't care if Bradford plays 3 games and then Rosen's. I'm a believer in Rosen. Hasn't looked great so far, but I really think those 2 guys will be a big-time upgrade for him. That offense should be better. You also got David Johnson. Things should open up a little more in the receiving game and the passing game as well. So I got Larry Fitz at 13. I think he's a high-end wide receiver 2 in PPR leagues. I think he's almost a lock to have over 90 receptions again.
I'll be honest, I've been trying to change this in myself and a little bit of self-reflection. When it comes to fantasy football, I am definitely an ageist. Like, if you're over, 23, I'm like, you are old as shit. I don't want you on my team. Let's move on here to 16 through 20. Number 16, Doug Baldwin. Number 17, Amari Cooper. Number 18, Demaryius Thomas. Number 19, Juju Smith-Schuster. And tied at number 19, technically number 20, Chris Hogan.
You guys are both down on Baldwin. I think he's going to be fine week 1. Pete Carroll came out and said he's going to be fine week 1. Are you guys just nervous about that, or are you guys just punting on the whole Seahawks offense in general right now?
Pete Carroll once told his mother he'd take care of her, and he pulled her off life support when she sprained her ankle. Okay, I do not trust Pete Carroll as far as I can throw him. I like Doug Baldwin a lot. It just seems like there's something else there. I feel like we're missing something in the Doug Baldwin situation. I hope he plays week 1. I'm huge on Russell Wilson this year. Doug Baldwin's a big factor in that. But I am, in terms of my own team, a mid number 2. That's where I want Doug Baldwin. Josh, you're the Seahawks beat reporter.
Yeah, I like Doug Baldwin. I think that he's still suffering, not suffering, but hampered by an injury that he suffered from last year. So I think he's still hampered by it. And I think he's going to miss a game or two. But I think that throughout the season, he's going to put up some big numbers. And that is a reason why that I think we all have Russell Wilson so high. You're not going to have Russell Wilson be a top 3 quarterback in fantasy and not expect Doug Baldwin to be a top wide receiver. So you got to have the faith in Doug Baldwin, which I do. I just think he's going to miss a couple of games, which is going to knock him down a couple of pegs. If he was completely healthy, I probably would have moved him up into my top 15.
If he was completely healthy, I could not agree more. The guy I want to talk about here, for at least 2 years, if not 3-4 years, it was Julio Jones, A.J. Green, Demaryius Thomas. Those 3 names were all talked about in the same breath. Now, we have A.J. Green in our top 10. We have Julio Jones in our top 10. Demaryius Thomas all the way down at number 18. Is it him? Is it his quarterback? Is it just playing in Denver? Why is Demaryius Thomas not living up to expectations?
In my eyes, it's been his quarterback play ever since Peyton Manning left. That's kind of when he broke out, when he became that elite option at the wide receiver position. It's kind of been bad. You've had Brock Osweiler there, Trevor Siemian there, and now they're getting Case Keenum, which everyone thinks is going to be an upgrade. It should be, as long as that offensive system isn't totally backwards and John Fox style, kind of like how it was last year. It was pretty bad. Hopefully, hopefully Case Keenum can fix this. Demaryius Thomas still has the ability. Last year, didn't have the greatest year, but was still wide receiver 16 in PPR leagues. It was kind of a down year in general for wide receivers, but he's shown that he's still got that ability to be a mid-level wide receiver too, which is extremely valuable right now.
He was like the anti-Devontae Adams, where he was getting a lot of points without all the touchdowns. Like that's why he got the way.
He just scored a touchdown to week 9.
Right. I mean, that's I had him on my bench. It just was one of those. Josh, Demaryius Thomas, would you at 4.7's his ADP right now? Would you draft him there?
No. I'm staying away from Demaryius Thomas. You gotta look at Case Keenum and the way that he flourished last year, right? He had quick wide receivers such as Diggs and Adam Thielen, and the big bodied wide receiver in Treadwell didn't do anything. And I like Demaryius Thomas. He's a much better talent than Treadwell is. Obviously, we can all agree to that. I just think that Case Keenum likes the quicker of the wide receivers, the smaller wide receivers. And once Chad Kelly becomes the starter, then maybe I'll be talking about Demaryius Thomas.
I'm pretty sure that Josh has a bet out there with one of our listeners about how many times he can say Laquan Treadwell per podcast. Your infatuation with that man is extremely disturbing, in all honesty. I want to know, you're up here at end of the 3rd round, early 4th round. Amari Cooper and Juju Smith-Schuster are both on the board. Amari, let's call it what it is. Extremely disappointing. Has fallen off. He should probably be one of those top 15 guys. He's, not quite there. Or Juju Smith-Schuster in a great system, got a great quarterback, playing alongside Antonio Brown. Who do you take?
I'm taking Cooper. I think he's a clear-cut number one option in Oakland. Been saying that. Juju did most of his damage when AB was out last year when he missed a couple games that he did. Like Juju's still young, but Cooper's still young as well. I believe he's only 24 years old. John Gruden has been known for getting a lot out of his number one wide receivers. Multiple times has been able to produce wide receiver one in fantasy football. Give me Cooper. I think by far he has more targets and yards. The only thing that could be down would be the touchdowns.
So, Josh, Tom just took Amari Cooper right in front of you. You're up, and you have the option of taking Juju Smith-Schuster or Chris Hogan.
Yeah, give me Chris Hogan over Juju. I'd rather have that guy that I think is going to produce with Tom Brady with Julian Edelman out for the next couple of weeks. I like Chris Hogan this year. I like Amari Cooper above Juju Smith-Schuster as well. I believe I have them both above Juju. And honestly, I don't care if you guys laugh at me. You guys can S a D if you want, but I think James Washington is going to take that Martavis Bryant role and he's going to score some touchdowns deep down the field, and I think that's going to take a little bit of the production away from Juju Smith-Schuster.
We can S a D if we want, is what he said, Tom, if you missed that. Let's move on here, 21 through 25. Number 21, AR-15, Allen Robinson. 22/tied for 21, Brandon Cooks. 23, Golden Tate. 24, Michael Crabtree. 25, Corey Davis. Tom, just pick one. Tell me why you like him.
Based on their ADP, it'd probably be Crabtree. He's going 607 right now. I got him as wide receiver 27, a little bit lower than you guys. But I think that connection with him and Flacco, I think he's going to be the clear-cut number one option. You got Smokey Brown, who's getting a lot of talk right now in Baltimore. John Brown, that's his nickname.
Smokey
Brown. He always gets injured. The sickle cell trait has been bad for this man. Tim, it's recorded. It's not like your Greg Olsen take where he's gonna miss time because his brother's.
How many games did Greg Olsen play last year?
Because he got hurt.
You want to believe what you want to believe.
Michael Crabtree, he's been a consistent option, good intermediate route runner. He's probably good for 7 to 8 touchdowns, 80-plus receptions. I like Crabtree this year.
Tom, you believe Katrina was fake. I believe that Greg Olsen's injury was fake. Joshua, out of those guys that I mentioned, that was Allen Robinson, Brandon Cooks, Golden Tate, and then Corey Davis. Which one you want to talk about? Why you love him or hate him? Go.
I do like Crabtree to Tom's point. John Brown cannot say.
I didn't say Crabtree.
What's that?
I didn't say Crabtree. One of the other guys.
I know. AR-15. I'll talk about him. This is a guy that has been going higher and higher on boards that I have seen. Tom, you have him as number 16.
Yep.
Tim, where do you have him?
I have
22.
him 22.
Yep.
I have him 25. I'm a little leery of not just AR-15, but the Bears' offense as a whole. I don't know exactly what the Bears' offense is going to do, who they're going to throw the ball to. Now, we know AR-15 is a very talented, big wide receiver, fast wide receiver, but he's coming off of a torn ACL, so I have him pegged down a couple spots compared to you guys. I'm not as high on him this year. I'd probably be in dynasty format. I would be trying to buy low and then hope for the best the year after, but that's just me.
Josh, I couldn't agree more. We're on the same page. You do have him a little bit lower than I do, but I feel like we're exactly where we need to be. I don't know what the Bears are bringing to the table, in all honesty, and I don't know how Allen Robinson fits in there, in all honesty. So we'll see. The last guy I want to talk about is Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks gets traded to the Rams. Is he going to find a home there? Now, 2 years ago, he was a top 10 wide receiver. 2 years ago, he was one spot in front of Joshua's love child, Michael Thomas. Can he get back there with Jared Goff, with Sean McVay, with that what they have built there defensively, offensive-wise? Can he fill that a better version of that Sammy Watkins role? That's the question. Still very, very young himself. Very concerned with why has this happened to him. There has to be an issue there. You don't have that type of talent and get kind of shipped around the way that you have with no issues. So interested to see how that all plays out. Let's move on. 26, Sammy Watkins. 27, Alshon Jeffrey. 28, Cooper Kupp. 29, Jamison Crowder. 30, Marvin Jones.
Someone you just brought up, Brandon Cooks. I'm going to talk about his teammate, Mr. Cooper Kupp. I have Cooper Kupp ranked above Brandon Cooks this year, Cooper Kupp at 25. I liked the connection that him and your boy, Small Hands Jared Goff, had last season. 6 of the last 7 games of the season last year, he had a quality start. Means he was a top 30 wide receiver, so he was worth playing at the end of the year. You know, he's kind of an older sophomore player in the NFL, his second year. I believe he'll be 25. But he was pro ready when he came to the NFL. Spent a lot of time in college. I think he's going to take a lot of those red zone targets that Sammy Watkins is leaving. That is not Brandon Cook's role at all. Sammy Watkins was very good in the red zone for the Rams last season. I think Cooper Kupp's taking that. I think he's got a good shot to lead this team in receptions and yards this year.
Josh, someone not named Cooper Kupp. Talk about them. Again, Sammy Watkins, Alshon Jeffrey, Jamison Crowder, Marvin Jones.
Let's go with Jamison Crowder. I like Crowder a lot this year, especially for the fact that he's going to have Alex Smith over there. And Alex Smith last year, he decided to finally throw the long ball. But what his bread and butter is throwing the short routes. And you got to look at Jamison Crowder. His catch percentage is almost about 65% catching the ball. He had 789 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. And Chris Thompson, the running back, looks like he's not going to be healthy to start the season. And Chris Thompson was catching a lot of the balls out of the backfield third down. I think some of those catches could easily go to Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder is probably a guy that may even move up my boards probably in the next week going into our draft that we have. So we'll see how that goes.
I really want to talk about Sammy Watkins here a little bit, but I'm not going to. I'm going to talk about Alshon Jeffrey. Alshon Jeffrey, there's a lot of concern right there in Philadelphia. He's at least going to start the season on the PUP list from everything that I've read. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. That's what everything I've read. I don't know any. All I know is by what I've read. There's also been rumors that he's going to be cut. And he just got a new contract that's not going to happen. It was. I'm telling you. There's stranger things in the NFL. Make sure to listen later on this week for our full recap. We got a ton of crazy stories with what's going on in the NFL. I am staying completely away from Alshon Jeffrey. Not going anywhere near him. There's a ton of weapons there to begin with anyway. Alshon Jeffrey is a locker room guy for them right now. I am not going anywhere near one Alshon Jeffrey. Let's move on here. I'm going to do 31 through 37 and a half. This Tom's got one guy named without a number next to it. 31, Josh Gordon. 32, Julian Edelman. 33, Devin Munches and Funches. 34, Pierre Garçon. 35, Robbie C&I Anderson. 35, again, Randy Cobb. 37, Emmanuel Sanders. And no number, Marquise Goodwin.
31 on our list, Josh Gordon, ADP 412 right now. The reason he's at 31 is because I did not have him in my top 40. I really don't have much faith in this dude playing much football this year. Right now, he's still not permitted to play. I'm just not a believer in him. He is struggling with some inner demons, and I will believe it when I see it for him to be on the field week 1. When he has played, he's been spectacular. I think it's the best supporting cast he's ever had in Cleveland. I'm just not a believer in the man right now.
I'm going to let Josh talk about his best friend, Josh Gordon, here in a second. I had Josh Gordon all the way at, where is he? 23. There's 2 routes for Josh Gordon to go right now. I take his reflection on himself stepping away as a good thing. I see it having someone like a Jarvis Landry, other elite players around him now, is only going to raise his game. He sees the writing on the wall. The Browns are getting better. He was a part of it young when he was dumb. He's cleaned himself up. He's gotten the help that he needs. How many NFL players have we seen go through what Josh Gordon has gone through and completely fall off? Never heard from again. Great players. You see it all the time. I had him that high because he is an elite talent. Mm-hmm. And if he can get his mind right and his health right, he is going to be an elite player. Josh Gordon.
One of those guys that you are referring to, Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver Justin Blackman, just from a couple years ago.
Fatty McGee, yep.
But Josh Gordon, I had him rated number 29 on my list, below Golden Tate and ahead of Alshon Jeffrey. So a little bit lower than what you have, Tim. But at the same time, again, with all these reports coming out that Josh Gordon can go to practice, but he can't practice, but he's ready to practice, we don't know exactly what is in store for Josh Gordon on the year. So that's the very tricky part on what's going to happen with Josh Gordon. He is a top-tier talent. I just don't know if he's going to stay healthy all year. I want to be a believer. I just don't know if I can. But the one guy I wanted to talk about was Robbie Anderson. And I think it's kind of a slap in the face that we have him that low at number 35. I mean, I have him at 33. I wanted to put him higher, but I think he finished number 18 last year overall wide receivers. They had Josh McCown as the quarterback throwing the ball, and now they're going to have maybe a new quarterback in your little love child that you have, Tim. But,
yep. They will. Sam Darnold, week one starter.
I think Robbie Anderson should deserve more attention and should be a little bit higher on the list. I think he's in store for a pretty decent year.
He can be in store for a pretty decent year if he can keep the attention off of himself.
I'm just worried about him getting suspended.
Right, that's
what
I'm saying. Keep the attention off yourself, Robbie Anderson. I'll bring you higher. Oh, yeah. I have no problem with it. He still has a legal case pending. He got the other one discharged somehow. That's my biggest concern.
Let me say this. There is no way, in my personal opinion, I am drafting Robbie Anderson as a high-end number 2. But if you're talking about if you go heavy running back in your draft strategy and Robbie Anderson's there and you have Will Fuller there, I'm taking Robbie Anderson.
I agree. I agree completely. Let's go. We got about 5-6 minutes left here before we have to wrap up. I want to talk about the one guy that's at the bottom of your list that we haven't talked about, we haven't mentioned, someone that you want to talk about. Go.
For me, it's going to be Kenny Stills. I ranked 35. He was a wide receiver 3 last season, and that was with that target hog Jarvis Landry gobbling up all the targets in Miami. I think Kenny Stills, clear-cut, number 1 option in Miami for me. I do not believe in Devontae Parker at all. Broke his finger. We'll see how long that will keep him out of the lineup. I think it's going to be a good amount of time. I am drafting Kenny Stills all over the place right now, especially in best ball leagues. Hopefully get him in our main keeper league as well. Big fan of Kenny Stills this year. I think he's got top 30 potential once again this year.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how Kenny Stills played out. He's got fingers like our buddy old Spencer Camp. They're all crooked and weird now for Devontae Parker. So interesting to see how Kenny Stills plays out. He's a big weapon there. That's a guy that I can see having 3-4 real big weeks for the Dolphins with now having Ryan Tannehill back. Joshua, who's your guy?
I like Kenny Stills, Tom. That was a very good pick.
Thank you.
One guy that I did not have on my list, but I wanted to try to find a spot for him, is Kenny Golladay. I think you guys can look at my list and realize I left a pretty big name off of there in Mr. Marvin Jones, and I think that's because Kenny Golladay is going to take a huge leap this year, and I think he's going to outperform Marvin Jones for the Lions.
I just don't see it. I think, again, you used the term as a joke. It was it was one of my decisions earlier. You said that it was a disservice to the listeners and the fans. I think it's egregious to keep Marvin Jones off of this list. Having a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, they throw the ball a ton. They're playing great teams. The NFC North has a tough schedule. The defense has improved, but I feel like they're still going to have to throw the ball around without knowing what they necessarily have in the running game right now this year. So I think not having Marvin, not that Kenny Golladay can't be a factor, but Marvin Jones is a guy that you have to have on your top 40, Josh. My guy, no, not you. my guy that I have here at number 40 is the LA Chargers, Mike Williams.
Love it.
I have him at 40. Listen, this is a guy that last year people were having in their top 30. They were having him up there. He's going to go. He's going to be the complement to Keenan Allen. Those two were going to go out there and kill it. He was injured, went out there. He had his back injury. He played, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. I think he only started one game.
I don't think he played at all.
No, Mike Williams played last year. Positive he played last year.
Bet.
You look it up, but I'm pretty sure because he played. He had a reception last year.
What do you want to bet?
He had 11 receptions last year. Look it up.
Want to bet?
Look it up. Dollar bet.
All right.
Dollar bet. You look it up while I'm talking. He's the guy that. What's he going to bring to the table? What's he going to do for the LA Chargers? Is he going to be the Kevin White of the Chargers and just fall off? How many receptions did he have last year, Tom?
11.
11 receptions last year. Thank you very much. I did my homework. He came back after week 6, I believe he came back after he was initially put on that PUP list, so week 7 it must have been. And what's he going to be with Keenan Allen? If they can get both of them going with Pip Rivers, with Melvin Gordon, and with the defense they have there in Los Angeles, I just think he's being forgotten right now. Big-bodied wide receiver. He was a top draft pick for a reason. You guys say it all the time. You don't draft guys that early to not include them in the offense. Mike Williams, this is a guy that I think next year we're going to look and say, man, Tim was the only one to have him ranked in the top 40. God, Tim is smart. I love him so much.
I highly doubt I'm saying that. But, yeah, I love your point, Tim. He's going off the board as 45th wide receiver, 10-01. And you start looking at the group of players right here. He's the one guy who has a realistic chance to be a wide receiver too. Look, saying that Keenan Allen gets hurt week 2 and misses the whole season, is that really like a big question mark?
I can hear Josh shaking in his boots over there.
And the last time Josh had him in our Keepers League,
he
got hurt week 1
Yep.
and kind of messed Josh's whole season up. So Mike Williams has that chance. He just hurt another cornerback today, Casey Hayward. He's kind of dominating, being that big bully goal line threat, and that's something they need, especially without a valuable pass catching option at the tight end spot. Mike Williams, he's got a real chance of catching double-digit touchdowns.
Scored a touchdown in week 2 of the preseason, played all the way into the third quarter.
Beautiful.
Getting his reps in, learning the best. Gentlemen, that's all I have. Do either of you have anything to add before we go? No.
I think
Quick,
it was
quick.
I think it was very uncalled for about the Keenan Allen discussion that we just had. But, that's just me.
Sorry, Josh.
We are.
Just think about it, right? He had 6 catches and 63 yards in the first half. He was on pace for like 200 catches.
All right.
3,000 yards, all right?
All right. We are Pony Keg Sports. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Pony Keg Sports. You can follow Josh on Twitter at Pony Keg Sports. You can follow Tom at Pony_Keg_Tom. And you can follow me at Fight Talk Tim. And make sure to go check out our sponsor, Rogue Energy. If you drink coffee, if you drink Red Bulls, Monsters, any of that stuff, if you use a pre-workout, Rogue Energy is the answer to all of that. And right now, use the promo code PKS at checkout. You get 10% off. And then our friends at Rogue Energy say, you know what? Those guys at PKS are awesome. Everyone does listen to them. And they are getting us some love now as well. Gentlemen, it was very fun. The wide receiver gets very, very heated at times. A lot out there. There's probably a lot of people that we missed that could be a big-time factor. Make sure to stick with us throughout the rest of the week. We're going to have our tight end, top 20, I believe, breakdown, and we're going to have just a standard NFL talk episode as well. Guys, it's been fun. Josh, safe travels on the rest of your time through Bettendorf, Iowa, and down to Indy. And Tom, I will see you later on in the week here. Later, guys.
Peace.
Peace.